Hello and welcome to the 5th time of asking of the Lame Sheep Racing's British Touring Car Series here, and we are back for the second time this season at Oulton Park. That's right, we return to Oulton Park as where we kicked off the league all the way back in the first 3 rounds of the championship, but we are here to mark the halfway point of this season. Rounds number 12. Rounds number 13, 14 and 15 here, and it is once again the competitors we know and love at the top of your practice server right now. That's David Johansson and Dan Mould, the fastest out there, but not too far behind. We got Matt Neal, Thomas Batchelor as well, but right now Johansson looking comfortable over a second out at the top of that field at the moment, and it is looking like it is going to be an absolutely fantastic evening of racing once more as we return to Oulton Park. We were here for the full layout of the circuit, but without the Britain chicane at the beginning of the season. We are here at a slightly different layout this time as we go to the international hairpin, where we cut off the end of the circuit, in which we saw Dan Mould go around there in the first round of the season back in race number 2, and he crashed out from the lead of that race. It was the only time that we've really seriously looked like we might have a driver take all 3 race wins in a single weekend. It is yet to happen. A lot of drivers have taken the double. No one so far has taken all 3. The latest double, of course, came by the way of Thomas Brown last week as we headed out across to Thruxton. But once again, we are back down here again at Oulton Park and looking to see if we can find yet another new name out on top. Thomas Brown taking his first win last week at the first race of Asking at Thruxton. He took his second win of the season in race number 3. Will we see a new driver visit down the victory road again today? Will we see a new driver take pole position? Right now, like I'm saying, it's David Johansson who is looking fastest of them all in this practice session by well over a second at the moment. So he could be looking to take his second pole of the season as it stands. Let's have a look then at the calendar as we go ahead this season. And like I say, Oulton Park Island is the halfway point here for the championship. November 30th, we are heading back to Oulton Park. It takes us in the 13th, 14th and 15th round of Asking. We head across to Brands Hatch in 2 weeks' time as the second half of the season kicks off on December 14th. And we head across to Knockhill for the final race of the year. That'll be at a fantastic event 4 days before Christmas. It's going to be a brilliant one to come and join in on in the Scottish countryside. Then we're going to head across to Silverstone National for the 8th week of Asking. That's how we return in January 4th at the beginning of 2026, and it'll be do you know what, this league will actually be the final broadcast on the Beehive Bill Broadcasting channel on December 21st, and it will be the first one in 2026 on January the 4th. So it's a great way to head into those last 3 weeks as well. And we then head across to Donington Park for the second time. Of course, we had some incidents at the national layout. We head across to the GP layout on January the 11th, and we finished this championship off at Brands Hatch on January the 18th. It is going to be an incredibly interesting race, that is for sure. But before we focus too much on today's event, it is important to know that the championship drop weeks have now been applied. 2 drop weeks are going to be applied for each of the championships. So for each of the drivers in the championship, it takes the whole weekend and drops the weeks in which you get the least amount of points with all 3 races combined. That being said then, let's see if we can get the championship standings up so we can have a look at how the championship standings are now with those drop weeks applied. And it is a change near the top. Matt Neal, Dan Mould tied now on 74 points apiece. Mould has got those victories to his name, of course, 5 victories. Matt Neal has got 2 victories to his name. but the consistency of David Johansson is still showing with those drop weeks, but he is now only 12 points clear at the top of the championship, and if he doesn't have a good evening today, that could disappear. Of course, drop weeks will then be applied for this week as well, so we will keep an eye on how the championship is going to progress as the evening progresses as well, and we'll have another look at the championship standings at the end of today's events as well. But Matt Neal's not the only Alpha Corsa near the top of the standings. In fact, all three of them are now there. Thomas Brown taking 2 victories last week. It climbed him up into the top 10 of the championship. It has put him into 4th with those drop weeks applied, and ahead of teammate Thomas Batchelor, who sits 65 points, just 1 point shy of Ronald de Jong in the Hydro Race Racing Forces. And if you couldn't notice just there behind the championship standings, rain started to drizzle for just a moment. It is a wet weekend. It is drying out there a little bit, but there is still rain falling as well, so it is going to be a mix of conditions there, but those wet tyres likely to be the tyres that they're going to be on all evening long. Hayden Ahmed sits in 7th position in the championship, just ahead of Jan Mild, even with the championship points so close together before the drop weeks. Drop weeks applied, and still Hayden Ahmed and Jan Mild are right next to each other, but it has invited Riley Pogue and Scott Malcolm into that fight for the middle point of your top 10. Let's see if we can get the next ones on there as well. Demis Titular, he sits in 11th position with 48 points, just clear of Nico Steros. James Pacey Knight, we've not seen him for a few weeks. However, he is back here today. He is the 2nd fastest out there in the practice session. Gregory Speakman sits in 14th position ahead of Stephen Hurd, who has won 1 race so far this season, but he has only competed back at rounds 4 to 6 at Donington. Then we have Paul Titmer. He sits in 16th position in the championship, 1 place off of Stephen Hurd. And Pete Paver sits in 17th place right now with 28 points, a point clear of drivers who have been booted from the championship for driving standards: Jack Burgess, Oliver Heron, Harry Hallworth, and a number of drivers on the rear end of the championship standings as well. But that is how it looks going into the weekend here. It is going to be an incredibly tight championship fight with those drop weeks applied, and it is going to be interesting to see how our drivers fare in these conditions, because it is a very tricky circuit out there to get used to, especially in these wet conditions. It is going to be even harder for our drivers to be able to keep it on the circuit. We got a really tight hairpin in there, which wasn't here last time that we visited Oulton Park. So drivers now having to learn a new braking point, a new corner, and seeing how they get on. And as we look at towards the end of this practice session, which has about a minute and a half left in it, it is David Johansson out top still. He's about 3/4 of a second clear at the moment, so he should be confident going into the qualifying session and placing it as high up as he possibly can. Let's have a little look at the track that they are heading around then. Like I said, we've been here to Oulton Park once this season already. We're here for a second time, and we are here for the international layout of Oulton Park today. Just 12 turns on this layout, and it is going to be 5 of them going to the left, 7 of them to the right, as most circuits are around the world. It is a clockwise circuit heading primarily to the right-hand side. Of course, we've already seen a few of those anti-clockwise circuits around the world that are so famous, such as Interlagos. We don't have them here today. We are going to stay in that clockwise direction. 2.26 miles of tarmac for our drivers to get themselves around, and as the rain continues to fall here, it is going to be a very interesting qualifying session. This practice session coming to a close now, and David Johansson is the fastest man in that session very, very clearly, as we will now get ourselves situated, ready for this qualifying session. It is going to be an open qualifying session. If you're new around here, we've got 3 races coming up today. We've got the 13th, 14th, and 15th round of the championship. today. All of those races being 12 minutes long, so nice, short, quick and snappy. Race number 1 is going to be decided by our open qualifying session. Race number 2 is going to be the results of race number 1 on your grid. And race number 3 is going to be determined by the results of race number 2 with the top 6 reverse. That has been adjusted since Snetterton. Following the number of incidents we saw at Donington. However, it is always crazy, that third race of the day, so stick around and make sure you watch. If you're new around here as well, make sure you hit that follow button here on the Beehive Build Twitch channel so that you are notified when we go live and bring these wonderful events to you. And also make sure you head across to our YouTube channel to check out all of the extended highlights from the league as well. So you can sit there and binge watch all of the amazing racing and, of course, the crashes that we see each week. We are here then in qualifying, and we are going to see if we can jump across to watching David Johansson, who is one of the first drivers out there on the field and looking like he is wanting to get in a nice quick lap time. We start to see their spacing out on the circuit. This circuit not as, not really going to be going as much on the toe that we saw at Thruxton, that we saw at Snetterton. I would say that this is going to be a lot of independent running here. You are going to get a distant toe, that's for sure, but with all the turns that you have around the Oulton circuit, it is very much on how good you can run your lap rather than how much of a toe can you do to pull in those tenths of a second. Right, we are watching championship leader David Johansson here in the qualifying session, which is 10 minutes on the board, open qualifying, all drivers out there, and we are going to see if he can get in a nice lap here as we've gone through the final corner. All drivers out there on wet compound of tyres, and running right now, we are going to jump on board and see how we get on with a lap on board David Johansson. He has only got one pole position so far this season. That was for Donington at the second week of asking, and he did that the week after Dan Mould went pole. Dan Mould went pole last week, so could we see a pattern going here? And if so, could we see Matt Neal on pole again next week at Brands? Let's see what David Johansson can do here. It's very wet out there. You can see all of the puddles, and it's going to be really important to avoid those puddles as much as you possibly can. Through into the hairpin now. This is where it cuts off from the full GP loop. It cuts off from that left-hander that Dan Mould crashed in race number 2 back at the beginning of the season, and his first of many mistakes that have currently happened. Onto the braking zone now as Johansson gets to the curbing on the inside. There is a lot of puddles, but Johansson deciding he is going to run straight over each of them. He doesn't care what sort of aquaplaning that might do, touching the curb on the outside. That is a really dangerous thing to do in racing cars, of course, is to touch the curb in the wet. And in the dry, we saw Mould half spin just touching a curb. So really pushing the limits here from David Johansson as we head up towards the final turn, and let's see what he is able to do now as we get on towards the braking zone for the championship leader, the fastest man in the practice session, and see where he is going to be able to place himself. Of course, he is going to be the first man across the timing line and therefore will go provisionally pole position, but we will then see if anyone is able to knock him off of that spot as he goes through turn number 1. Thomas Batchelor goes into second just behind. Matt Neal now gets in a time, and we'll get in the time in just a moment as he comes through the final corner. 7 tenths of a second behind Johansson was Batchelor's time. What is Neal's time going to be? It's a tenth off of Thomas Batchelor, so there are some gaps to be found for the 2 Alpha Corsa drivers that are racing today. We won't see all 3 of them out there today, which is a shame, actually, because it means that we won't see Thomas Brown continue to extend his fight up towards the front of the championship after the 2 wins last week as well. He will have to try and fight back as the season progresses on, as with at the end of today, we will be halfway through this championship, of course. Demis Titchler goes into 4th position there, is looking to try and get into the top 10 of the championship as well as we head up towards the chicane now. It's a corner that we saw a couple of instants at when we were here earlier in the season. Are we going to see it a bit clearer today? As we've got a similar number of drivers out there, so they are hoping in these conditions that it remains a lot like it did at Snetterton, where there were a couple of instances, but for the most part, Snetterton was just a great fight for all the different positions. Of course, not hoping it's going to be like Snetterton is Dan Mould, who ran out of fuel in the second or third race of the day. I think it was the third race of the day when Matt Neal was just able to absolutely dominate back at Snetterton. It was the third race. And he ended up putting in an additional lap over the previous 2 races, which meant that quite a few drivers ran out of fuel. As Matt Neal goes second fastest there, Dan Mould was provisionally second, now drops down to third. But you can see the gap and see how much speed that David Johansson has out at the front here, because he does have a lot of speed underneath his Hyundai. And actually, I was noticing that in the practice session. Now, we've seen the Honda become the car that's normally towards the front as the season has progressed. However, the Hyundai in these wet conditions around Oulton Park seem to be doing quite nicely indeed. So I'm sure that they'll be hoping for some more of the same in terms for Matt Neal and Dan Mould. However, for the Hyundai of David Johansson, we'll be hoping to pull out a bit more of that time, as Johansson now gets a little bit of a wobble on, but does head up now towards the final 2 corners on the lap. And I say final 2 corners. Realistically, it's only one. It's this right-hander, but this technically is not the final corner of the lap, because we go for a small little kink over the crest towards the left as Jan Maard puts in a time good enough for 6th position and ahead, crucially, of championship rider Hayden Ahmed there, who's down in 9th position right now, across the line again. The puddles don't seem to be drying up too much, and the racing line is certainly staying wet as well. No rain falling at the time being, but that does not mean we aren't going to see more rain as the weekend progresses. And I think that it is going to be a very damp week, as I was talking to Gregory Speakman before the start of this event, and it is the final round that we're going to be seeing proper rain at. There'll be a little bit later on in the season towards Silverstone, but this will be the last time that we see a deluge of rain out there on the circuit, and drivers having to contend with that, as Hayden Ahmed decides to take offence from my comments and goes past Jan Mild, much to Jan Mild's dismay, because now they need to find a little bit more time. And in fact, Gregory Speakman finds time out there on the circuit as well and knocks Jan Mild down to 10th. Riley Pogue is the only driver out there at the moment without a valid lap time to his name. We are going to ride on board with him as we head around towards the final turn here. And, well, again, not the final turn, but the final right-hander as we get heavy onto the brakes. Can Pogue get in a valid lap here? Even if he does get in a valid lap, his fastest lap so far, which is invalid, is 2 seconds off of Jan Mild's time. But will this be a valid lap? It will be the last opportunity, most likely. Pogue goes second! From going with no valid lap, Riley Pogue goes second fastest. Johansson finds even more time to go to the top, but that was absolutely out of nowhere for Riley Pogue. Has gone the second fastest in this session, is on what will be a final flying lap with about a second to spare here, so we'll need to be absolutely on it as we come through the hairpin now. That is a slower, well, I say a slower driver, another driver in front going for laps. I believe that is Jan Mild just up ahead, so Mild, who is about 2.3 seconds off of Riley Pogue's time. Pogue was flashing the headlights as they came up towards the hairpin, but Mild is rightfully so on a flying lap himself and wanting to find about half a second here to get past Hayden Ahmed. Speakman moves up to 8th position. Dan Mould is only good enough for 6th position here, which is unlike him, and will be interesting to see how he fares in the race today. He really needs positions over David Johansson, but Johansson is looking mighty strong here. Could this be, for the first time this season, 3 race victories for a single driver? A big slide there from Riley Pogue will not improve this lap, but can Jan Mild improve? 3 seconds on the clock. Needs to get across the line. Does so. Is it an improvement? It is an improvement for 4th. Jan Mild goes 4th at the very end of qualifying, literally with a second to spare there. Goes into 4th position. That is ridiculous. Right, let's get the grid up then for race number 1. It is going to be David Johansson on pole position here. Riley Pogue will start in 2nd. Matt Neal in 3rd. Jan Mild finding time there will start in 4th. Thomas Batchelor will start directly behind Matt Neal. The 2 teammates next to each other again. It's not gone well so far this season for Alpha Corsa starting next to each other. Demis Titchler will be in 6th position. 7th will be Dan Mould ahead of James Paisley Knight. Gregory Speakman will start in 9th. Paul Titmer from 10th. And Hayden Ahmed will start from the back of the field. Right, it is going to be 12 minutes on the clock in all 3 races once more. David Johansson on pole, but sits on the outside to turn number 1. The inside will go to Riley Pogue. Who is going to get the better launch here? Demis Titchler will not take the green flag. 12 minutes on the board. And we are away off of the line here for round number 13. We head up towards turn number 1. David Johansson has had a really good launch. Riley Pogue settles down into 2nd. 3rd is going to be side by side with Jan Mild looking to the inside of Thomas Batchelor. Can't do it. Matt Neal now moves to the right hand side. A slow launch from Neal means he's already down 2 positions on the start here. It's going to be side by side up ahead as well as Riley Pogue defending from Thomas Batchelor. Holds on to 2nd position in this one. Matt Neal stays behind Jan Mild at the moment, but they have gone through the first couple of corners cleanly here. But Matt Neal now looking to try and take position off of Jan Mild. Breaks early though, doesn't want to dive up the inside of Mild. That's invited. Dan Mould around the outside. Mould's not going to be able to hold it. On the exit of the hairpin now, a good exit from Matt Neal. Could get him to the left-hand side here. It is a good place to be as we get towards the breaking point on the chicane. If he can hold it side by side, he cannot, and he will have to stick behind Jan Mild, holding on to 4th position in this race. Matt Neal down 2, Thomas Batchelor up 2. Dan Mould is on the rear of Matt Neal, and Paul Titmer has gone up 3 places on the start here, up to 7th position. Demis Titchler has come out of pit lane, missed that race start, and will be starting. We'll have to try and catch up what is now an 18-second deficit at the back of this field. He'll be hoping for some issues for the drivers in front of him as we head up now towards turn number 11, and that's a dive to the inside for Matt Neal on Jan Mild in this fight for 4th position. Mild has got the speed on the outside though. Neal has to go slightly slower on that tighter line. That's invited Dan Mould back into this one as it's side by side between Hayden Ahmed and Gregory Speakman. Ahmed taking that position from Speakman as they get up towards turn number 1, and it's a little bit of a wobble there from Speakman. He gets it settled down though, and they are going to settle themselves down with Ahmed in 9th, Speakman in 10th. Matt Neal looking to the inside of Jan Mild, who is wide through turn number 3, and that is going to be line to Matt Neal, who takes that position up to 4th here. Jan Mild looking to the inside. It's side by side between Titmer and Mould behind. Mould on the inside line. Titmer stuck on the outside as that's Mild once again on the inside line of Matt Neal. Has to go extremely tight on the exit there. Doesn't want to push Neal off the circuit. They remain side by side. Mould stays ahead of Titmer behind. And now Neal has got a good amount of overlap on that outside line. Can he hold it on that wider line? It's going to be close. It was contact earlier in the season when we saw a move like this. No contact this time, and Mild stays ahead. But here comes Mould up the inside of Matt Neal, fighting for 5th position now. Mould on the outside line. They remain side by side here in the fight for 5th, with Mild holding on to 4th just a head ahead. Mould is going to get the inside. A little bit of water there for Matt Neal. Makes his car slide, puts on a little bit extra power, gets it back straight again. But now Matt Neal down to 6th. Dan Mould up to 5th. Mould is going to look to the inside of Jan Mild here into the final turn. Isn't going to work out the way that he would have hoped. Jan Mild continues to hold on to 4th. But here comes Matt Neal once more in this fight for 5th position with Dan Mould. Neal to the outside of Mould. It's not going to work out. A little bit of a late break there from Paul Titmer behind. Doesn't work for him as Hayden Ahmed and James Paisley Knight have swapped positions. Paisley Knight flashing lights at Ahmed there. The two teammates heading around together as we look once again at this fight. And that's a slide from Jan Mild and a touch from Dan Mould. And Matt Neal's going to come straight through the centre like Moses to take 4th position. Mould up the inside of Mild now. Neal gets on the brakes though, contact with Mould, and now Mild under attack from Paul Titmer just behind as Mild went from 4th down to 6th. Could it be down to 7th position here as we get into the chicane? It's side by side between Mould and Neal ahead. Mould on the inside, it will switch across to the outside. Titmer stays ahead of Mild behind. But are they going to remain clean here? They certainly are. Mould is going to get the speed on the exit with a smoother run there. Dan Mould didn't have the best of qualifying in 7th position, up now to 4th position. Matt Neal down from 3rd on the grid and trying to recover here. Was fighting there for that 4th place slot. Lost it out now, but could do something as we head up towards turn number 11. Gets heavy on the brakes, goes to a slightly different racing line here to get the speed. We're about halfway through this race and Riley Pogue is not losing out to David Johansson. It is relatively close between the two drivers, bearing in mind Johansson was significantly faster, but I think Pogue may have, well, he definitely ran off. It's potential slowdown on that exit there if you're not careful. I think he's okay though. But he will be wanting to keep as close as he can to David Johansson. I'd say they have been relatively similar in pace as the race has progressed. As that's a slide from Jan Mild, a slide from Matt Neal. Neal runs onto the grass here. And Paul Titmer now moves to the outside of Dan Mould. We head onto the brakes. Titmer looking to try and get a switchback, but Mould just gets a tighter line, runs it onto the inside and blocks that move. That was James Paisley Knight going slightly wide in his fight with Gregory Speakman at the back. And Demis Titcherer still running around here. Will get points for 11th position. We'll get, if I'm not mistaken, 5 points for 11th position. So wanting to get those points as Hayden Ahmed looks just momentarily up the inside of Jan Mild, who's race has gone from 4th position to falling down here the order, and now under attack from his championship rival Hayden Ahmed. Those two have been locked into a title fight the last few rounds, and it continues here at Oulton Park on track with the two of them as we head into the last 5 minutes of this race. Matt Neal losing out a little bit now to Dan Mould as it's side by side between Hayden Ahmed and Jan Mild behind. Ahmed takes that move, ducks it up the inside and takes the position. Let's see how that works out as we head into the final couple of turns, into turn number 11. Just nicely planted on the inside, and in fact that's the first driver that's been able to overtake Jan Mild on the inside of turn number 11. Dan Mould and Matt Neal both tried and couldn't do it, so that's a great move from Ahmed, doing something that the championship contenders couldn't do earlier in the race. Matt Neal here continuing to run around in P number 5, as you can see on the bottom right there, the drivers that have gained most in this race. Dan Mould gaining 3 positions, but he isn't the biggest mover so far as Mould's off. Mould is off. What has happened to Mould? That that is what has happened here to Mould. He's wide. And he just pulls straight off. Some issue there for Dan Mould. Has to pull off the circuit and is now out of race number 1. Oulton Park once again being a bit of a crutch here in at least one of the races for Dan Mould, but definitely there's some sort of issue there for him, and he will be out of this one. What that does mean is that Matt Neal will now take second securely in the championship at the end of this race. With this result, well, it depends actually how the drop weeks are applied at the end of the 3 events, and the 3 races, and that's what's going to be interesting to look at as well. As this is the championship lead. You know, Poe does have a chance in race number 2. If he keeps it smooth, Poe could take David Johansson here in race number 2. He's certainly finding the speed there as Paisley Knight chasing down Jan Mild. That was Hayden Ahmed off the circuit in the chase of Paul Titmer just up ahead as well. So those close fights now starting to break down a little bit as we head into the final few minutes of this race and final few laps of the race as well. It's side by side between James Paisley Knight, Jan Mild. Jan Mild's on the inside, goes deep. Paisley Knight goes for the up and under. Tucks to the inside line now. Mild is going to have to try and keep that speed on the outside line up towards chicane, but it looks like Paisley Knight has got significant overlap there. They do remain side by side as there's contact off up ahead. Hayden Ahmed off the circuit. Paul Titmer makes the corner, but Ahmed is going to get a significant slowdown with that one and will have to give the position back to Paul Titmer. But what has happened in that fight that was going on as they head up towards the chicane? It looks like there may have been a bit of an outbreaking move from Hayden Ahmed rather than anything going on with Titmer as he turns it. Yeah, it's deep from Titmer and then it's just completely missing the breaking point from Hayden Ahmed. But Ahmed does keep on the rear end of Titmer as they head on to the 7th lap of asking now. 0.6 of a second behind James Paisley Knight for Jan Mild. Mild found a huge amount of time in qualifying, was doing well in the first few laps of the race and holding on to a top 5 spot, but slipping down the order, and a huge slide from James Paisley Knight. Mild be looking at it and thinking, I've still got an opportunity here to take 7th position. Paisley Knight now will be going defensive to hold up Mild as well, because Hayden Ahmed and Jan Mild being in that title fight, Paisley Knight being Ahmed's teammate, surely will be doing some little bit of team game there. Hayden Ahmed on the rear end of Paul Titmer once more, again deep into the hairpin. Will there be an opportunity for Hayden Ahmed to take that move past Paul Titmer here? They head up towards the chicane once more. Are they going to keep it on circuit this time? They certainly are, as they head on through, and it's now settled themselves down everywhere apart from this fight for what would now be 6th. Hayden Ahmed down to 1.6 off of Paul Titmer. I would say that Ahmed, Paisley Knight and Mild are the fight that's going on here with 30 seconds left on the board. Next lap will be the final lap of asking. David Johansson taking the pole, leading all the way so far, and it'll only be the 2nd time this season, if Johansson can win, that the pole man has taken victory in race number 1. The last time that happened was here at Oulton Park for round 1. Dan Mould took his pole to race 1 victory. Can David Johansson take his pole to race 1 victory here today for the 5th week of asking? 2nd time we visit Oulton Park for round number 13 here, the first race of the day. And drivers have now settled themselves down, and Johansson has pulled a gap of 4 seconds to Pogue. And you can't say that Pogue has made mistakes and fallen off, because Pogue himself has a 7.5 second gap down to Thomas Batchelor, showing the speed, the pace that Johansson has, but also that Pogue has. Of course, they're allowed to switch cars as they go on. Johansson jumping into the Hyundai Elantra here today, and that Elantra doing the job. First and second in the race here in the wet. It's not rained as the race has gone on. It's still very, very wet out there, but the sun is shining. We head up towards turn number 11. And for just the third time this season, round number 13 is going to go the way of David Johansson. Pole to the victory without any issues for David Johansson, who takes his third win of the season. Riley Pogue will come home in second. Thomas Batchelor will come and take third ahead of Matt Neal. Fifth position will go the way of Paul Titmer, who's moved up 5 places in this race. James Paisley Knight will hold on to 6th, but Jan Mild has made the move past Hayden Ahmed for 7th because Ahmed has made a mistake on that last lap. Gregory Speakman takes 9th, and Demis Titchler is going to take 10th. This is what happened to Hayden Ahmed and why he fell from 6th position in this race. It looks like it happened towards the very end of the last lap of asking, as well as the left-hand side shows your results. That'll be your grid 2, and I wanted to have a look at what happened there, but it didn't want to show us because we've jumped across into the next race. Let's see if we're able to very quickly have a look, because we want to see what happened here to Hayden Ahmed, and it's just a core. It's just the rear end on the grass. The same thing happened to Gregory Speakman the last time we were here at Oulton Park, and it ended up costing him a good result as well. Now, let's have a look at the grid for race number 2. We'll very quickly run through your grid on this one. It is going to be Johansson winning race number 1. We'll start this one in 1st position. Second will go the way of Riley Pogue. Thomas Batchelor will start in 3rd with Matt Neal this time alongside in 4th. Paul Titmer in 5th with James Paisley Knight in 6th position. 7th position is going to go the way of Jan Mild ahead of Hayden Ahmed. Gregory Speakman will start in 9th with Demis Titchler in 10th. Dan Mould will start at the back of the field. Titchler starting from pit lane in race number 1. Dan Mould retiring from race 1. It wasn't an accident. It seemed to be something more to Mould's retirement, and he is yet to get out onto the field. So I don't know if potentially there's something more here for Mould that means he's not going to be taking part. In fact, I'm looking at the race voice chat that Mould was in earlier, and he is no longer in the voice chat. So I believe that we won't see Dan Mould for the rest of the weekend, which will be a shame, but it will become a drop weekend for him, as he will take advantage of those 2-week drops. But a shame for him anyway, and it will be really helping Matt Neal, who will now be wanting to solidify second in the championship, potentially try and do something with Johansson's pace. If someone can just get past Johansson at the very start of this race and they run side by side up towards turn number 1, it could place Johansson into a bit of a tricky position with drivers behind. But 12 minutes on the clock for round number 14 here. It's green, and we are away here for the 14th round of asking at Oulton Park, and it is a great launch for Riley Pogue. Johansson down to 2nd position off the start of this one, and it is going to be the 2 teammates in Alpha Corsa side by side with Matt Neal moving up to 3rd. 4th position now for Thomas Batchelor. It was, I believe, Hayden Ahmed or Gregory Speakman off the circuit at turn number 1. None of them have gone around though, and they have all settled themselves down early doors here, but it is Riley Pogue leading the way here. He is yet to win this season. This has been his strongest weekend so far, and right now he is leading this race, getting a great launch over Johansson at the start there. James Paisley Knight side by side with Paul Titmer here as they get up towards the braking zone of the chicane. That's Demis Titchler trying to get involved in this one as well. Titchler not starting race number 1, of course, out on the circuit means that this is the first time that he has seen other cars to fight with out on track, and he wants to do that being in 8th position in this race. But David Johansson here behind Riley Pogue as they head up towards the end of the lap. Pogue is going to have to drive a defensive drive here. Johansson is going to be going very attacking in the start of this one, because he's going to want to try to pull away from championship rival Matt Neal, who now sits just behind as we head out of turn number 11 over the crest of turn 12 and off of the first lap of Asking. Riley Pogue leads lap number 1 of 8 potential laps here. A lot of spray being kicked up as the drivers head through the water. Matt Neal was off the circuit. Slide from Thomas Batchelor behind, but they have all got through without incident on the opening lap of the race, with less than a second between every single driver, as there is now a fight for the lead. Johansson to the outside of Pogue. Pogue's going to brake later. Johansson going for the up and under, but Pogue places it perfectly. That is going to be a bump on the rear then. Johansson flashing the headlights, but that was a great defensive drive there from Riley Pogue. We head up towards the chicane now with Pogue out front, Johansson in second, and Matt Neal running behind, looking at this fight going on, seeing how he can benefit from it. Pogue a slightly slower line there. Johansson ducked out, looking to try and make a move through if possible, but it wasn't going to work out from where he was. We ride on board here with David Johansson as he chases down Riley Pogue, looking to try and move into the lead of this race. It's a slide from Pogue just up ahead, just a small slide, and again on the exit, but Johansson got that same step on the rear end. Could this be an opportunity up towards turn number 11? Johansson looks to the inside, but he tucks straight behind Pogue once more. Onto the brakes they go. Look how close he is. It's going to be a slight nudge once more, and up and over the crest towards the timing line. Riley Pogue leaving David Johansson yet again, but here is the opportunity. To the outside of turn number 1, Johansson's got the speed. Pogue has got that inside line, but it is going to go the way of David Johansson as the corner switches back over again. It's side by side for the race lead. There's contact, but Johansson moves through. Pogue tried his absolute hardest there to defend, but just a small nudge there unsettled the car, and it meant that Johansson has moved through as we head on towards the brakes of the hairpin. David Johansson leads on the third lap here with Riley Pogue in second, Matt Neal in third position, and Jan Mild has moved back up the order into fifth position behind now as they continue to fight, as this is Titcherer looking to try and make his way past James Paisley Knight for 7th position. They get onto the brakes. Titcherer on the outside and ducks in behind with Hayden Ahmed chasing down in that sandwich of teammates right now. Ahmed trying to just unsettle Titcherer there with a slightly different racing line. It won't work out, but they're running 7th, 8th and 9th position in this race at the moment. Johansson is now out ahead once more. Will Pogue be able to do anything to take that position back from Johansson, or will this be the first time this season that the race 1 winner becomes the race 2 winner? It is a slide there from Johansson, much smoother from Pogue as they head up towards turn number 1. The gap about 0.4 of a second right now as they head in towards turn 1. Johansson goes purple, has moved into the lead of the race, of course, and will now be hoping to extend that lead now that he is there, but Pogue will be wanting. He had a taste of the race lead. He's going to be wanting it back as they will be fighting out at the front of the field. Like I say, the rest of the field isn't too far behind. Gregory Speakman, the only driver out of what is this train all the way across the field at the moment, as that is wide there from Paisley Knight into the water as well. Titcherer on the outside, but here comes Hayden Ahmed to take advantage of Titcherer being on the wider line. Hayden Ahmed says, you were trying to go for my teammate, I'm going to go for you. There's a nudge between the two Elantra drivers as they now head up towards the chicane. And Ahmed is to the inside, but certainly doesn't have a wheel in here, so is not going to be able to try and take 8th position just yet off of Demis Titcherer as they continue to run around here on the 4th lap of Asking, as we're just about halfway through the second race of the day right now. And are quickly approaching the halfway point of this championship as well, as Ahmed chasing down Titular, continuing to do so as they head in towards turn number 10 right now, right on the rear end. Paul Titmer also looking to try and close on to Jan Mild, who has found his way back into the top 5, which is exactly what he needs, with Hayden Ahmed being down the order in race 1. Hayden Ahmed wants to take the position off the Titular though, goes to the inside of turn number 11. There was a deep moment there, pushing Titular slightly wide, but Ahmed moves in to 8th position right now. Titular down to 9th position, but will be very eager to take that position back, as the way that he lost it, that little bit of contact from the dive there from Hayden Ahmed. Ahmed wanting these positions, of course. Championship rival Jan Mild up in 5th position, finishing ahead of Ahmed in race 1 after Ahmed caught the grass and went around, of course. So at the moment it is going to be going Mild's way, and it'll be interesting to see after race number 3 how that championship is going to stand. In fact, we can get the live championship standings up in race number 3, because the whole weekend will therefore hopefully be dropped if I've coded it all right. Paul Titmer here behind Jan Mild, looking to try and take 5th position. It was a good amount of speed from Titmer, dies to the inside, but a very late move there. That was never going to really amount to anything in their fights, and it would have been quite a audacious move to get to the inside of the curve in there, as of the chicane there. You can see that the circuit is drying up a little bit, those puddles getting smaller, but it'll definitely be wet tyres all the way to the end of this one, as Titmer once again gets onto the rear end of Mild. Gets a bit deep though, will lose time to Mild and could potentially have Paisley Knight here going for the move into turn number 11. You can see that because Titmer's had to go defensive. Paisley Knight moves back across the racing line, as does Titmer. And Paisley Knight right now is going to have to hold on to 7th. Paul Titmer up in 6th position as we now head towards the timing line yet again, as we go on to the 6th lap of asking here, with about 3 more to go, including this one as they head around in through turn number 1. The fight for P number 5, led by Jan Mild. Chasing is Paul Titmer. Paisley Knight about another half a second behind, followed by Hayden Ahmed and Titular, who are in the rear end of this fight, wanting to get involved, but at the moment not close enough to do anything with that, as once again Titmer gets a good amount of speed here at the start of the lap. Will go to the outside of Jan Mild. Jan Mild got that tighter line, going for the up and under here. Paisley Knight not quite close enough to stop Titmer from ducking into it, and Titmer goes all the way to the right hand side of the circuit. Mild tried to go defensive, but Paul stuck his car in there just enough before Mild was able to close the door. Both drivers go deep, but Mild cuts the corner, going too late on the brakes, trying to hold on to a top 5 position. Slows down on the right to give up the time gained, and will have to relieve the position to Paul Titmer, potentially Paisley Knight here if Mild isn't able to get up to speed in time, but it looks like Jan Mild has, and will hold on to 6th here, but Paisley Knight saying, I really want this position, thank you very much. I'm going to have a look for 6th. Hayden Ahmed just behind will be really hoping his teammate can take Jan Mild for 6th, and then he can give it an opportunity as well, as we head into turn number 11. A slightly tighter line there from Hayden Ahmed, a wiggle of the back from Paisley Knight, but right now, is it going to be a push or an overtake from Hayden Ahmed? It is going to be an overtaking attempt. Hayden Ahmed goes to the inside of teammate Paisley Knight. Not enough overlap there. Paisley Knight will hold on to that one right now, as we are on the penultimate lap of asking. Riley Pogue has not allowed David Johansson to pull away out front, and in fact Pogue is the fastest man out there right now, going purple last lap. Looks to the inside of Johansson through the hairpin, can't do it as Titular makes a move past Ahmed. Ahmed now down to 9th position, but they're side by side into the hairpin, as once again Ahmed goes for the late move up the inside and takes 8th position back again. Let's see how that all played out, as I watched the gap to the lead increase to about 0.4 of a second. It looks like it was contact in the first part from Titular moving past Ahmed, and now it looks like Ahmed has gone off again. This is where the move was, as they continue to fight. There's definitely something further that has happened to Ahmed as Titchler, as that was the move that we caught up to live. This is what happened here. Oh, no. This is not what happened here. This is what happened here. In the fight, it looks like Titchler's gone deep to try and take the move past Ahmed, has run off the circuit, and Ahmed will take that position back through as we go on to the white flag lap. And Riley Pogue looks to the outside of Johansson here. This could be the first time that we see race 1 winner take race 2, or is it going to be the first time we see Riley Pogue win a race? We head through. That was off the circuit from Pogue, and look to the inside, a slightly tighter line there from Riley Pogue. It isn't going to work out at the moment, sitting just behind David Johansson. Quarter of a second between them as we head on towards the braking zone at the hairpin now. It's a slightly inside line from Johansson, and there's a nudge from Pogue behind. Runs a bit deeper trying to make that corner, but they both get through right now. Johansson getting the quicker exit. They maintain their gap as we now head up towards the chicane here in the fight for first place. Two different lines there as Pogue just slightly wider than Johansson in both the corners, but looking for the speed on the exit there. That was smoother from Pogue. Pogue is closing to the rear end of Johansson here. He'll have an opportunity into turn 11. He gets onto the water on the outside, placing his car in the rearview mirror of Johansson. Going for the tighter run. Is he going to get the speed on the exit? It looks like it might do here. Johansson goes defensive to the inside. Pogue doesn't know which way to go. Johansson on that tighter line. Pogue's going to try and get the speed on the exit, but it is going to go the way of David Johansson in race number 2. Johansson takes the double and will win ahead of Riley Pogue. Matt Neal takes the final podium spot ahead of Thomas Batchelor. Paul Titmer will come home in 5th. Jan Mild holds on ahead of Paisley Knight, and Ahmed Titchler will come across the line in 9th, and Gregory Speakman in 10th position in that one, with Dan Mould not starting the second race of the day. That was an incredible run. And from Riley Pogue, he would have been hoping that he could have done a little bit more in that one. We had ready for the final race of the day here. And it will be Jan Mild who will start on pole position in our inverted grid here. Top 6 inverted. And then Paul Titmer will be starting on the front row alongside. Thomas Batchelor will be starting this one in 3rd position ahead of Matt Neal. Riley Pogue will be starting 5th, and David Johansson, if he wants to be the first person to take the triple in one weekend, he needs to do it from 6th on the grid. 7th place will be James Paisley Knight, just missing out on the invert pole. Hayden Ahmed will be in 8th ahead of Demis Titchler. Gregory Speakman will be starting in 10th, and if we see Mould, he'll be starting in the back of the field, but I don't believe we will be seeing him in this last race of the day either. But that being said, it is going to be a pole position start for Jan Mild, although the driver in 2nd, which was, of course, Riley Pogue, got the better launch in race number 2. So it doesn't mean that you'll definitely have a greater run into turn 1, especially as you actually are starting on the outside line as well. With that, let's see if we can get a quick look at the live championship standings. That is how they will look at the end of the weekend with the current drop weeks applied. If it ended the way that they are starting race number 3 here, Dan Mould will be behind Matt Neal, and Thomas Batchelor, if he's able to find a couple of more places here, he will get even closer to Dan Mould. Could be just 4 points off of Mould here. Riley Pogue is doing great, up in that top 5, 1 position clear of Jan Mild as it stands in their current race 3 starting order. And Mild, good points over Hayden Ahmed. Right, as this race begins then, We are away for the 15th round of the season here, and it is a very poor launch from the front row of the grid for Paul Titmer, getting swallowed up into turn one. Jan Mild leads the way. Thomas Batchelor into second. Matt Neal into third. Johansson has already made his way up to fourth position, side by side with Paul Titmer there. But Johansson gets that position and will hold on ahead of his teammate Riley Pogue. He's dropped down to sixth position and has not had the start that he would have been hoping for with his opportunity to win in race number 2. It doesn't look like it's going to be that way here in race number 3. It's side by side between Hayden Ahmed and Titchler once more, as it's Ahmed to the inside. Titchler is going a bit more aggressive in this last race of the day. Sideways from Ahmed. Both drivers lose speed. Ahmed holds on to 7th. Paisley Knight, Ahmed's teammate, moves through to the inside now of the chicane. It's side by side ahead as Johansson makes the move up to 4th position. And Titmer stays ahead of Ahmed, Paisley Knight and Titchler continue to run side by side. This time Titchler is touched by Paisley Knight. Paisley Knight is going to have to hold along that wider line right now, as it's going to switch across into his inside line, which will be what he needs, with Titchler having to drop off just behind Riley Pogue up to 5th position. But David Johansson has found his way into 3rd position as Pogue is up the inside of Matt Neal now into the final turn. Heavy on the brakes there, a little bit of a slide, but Pogue is trying to keep up with David Johansson. Pogue knows that this reverse grid is going to be a great opportunity for him to get that overtake done on Johansson, with him being held up by other drivers. But Johansson now looks to the outside of Thomas Batchelor. It will become the inside if he can keep a wheel in there. Pogue just behind though decides to switch across, and it's side by side between Johansson and Pogue. Pogue on the inside, Johansson on the Pogue on the outside, Johansson on the inside. Johansson holds it ahead in 3rd position right now. Jan Mild has a gap of about 1.1 seconds out front ahead of Thomas Batchelor as it stands. Batchelor runs deep as the rain begins to fall. David Johansson and Thomas Batchelor now run side by side, and Johansson has got the speed here, and this should be an easy overtake into 2nd position. Can Batchelor do anything to hold it on the outside line? He breaks early to get it tucked in. Doesn't want to be under attack from Pogue either, and that means David Johansson, he won race 1, he won race 2. Can he win race number 3 here and match Dan Mould for 5 wins this season and become the first driver to take the triple? He's the first driver to win both race 1 and race 2 in the same weekend. Can he win all 3 here? The 15th round of asking as we head up towards turn number 11. The championship leader is being absolutely dominant here at Oulton Park. Pogue looks to the inside of Thomas Batchelor through turn number 11. It was just too far, couldn't quite do it. That can invite Matt Neal in to fight up towards turn number 1 here. They settle themselves down ahead, but it's not going to be settled down here because Neal to the inside of Pogue backs out of it early doors through that corner. Riley Pogue will hold on to 4th position as it stands. Johansson went purple last lap, 2nd in the race, closing down the gap to the race leader, Jan Mild, who got that reverse grid pole position and doing a very good job at holding out there out the front right now, and could, if he keeps up the speed, take a potential podium here in the reverse grid. Pogue to the inside of Batchelor as Johansson goes deep as well, losing a little bit of time to Mild ahead. It's side by side between Batchelor and Pogue. Batchelor gets the better exit out of the hairpin here. Pogue is going to have a very late lunge to make it move up the inside, as that is a wide entrance there from Batchelor. Pogue had to back out of that one, couldn't go for the overtake, and through the wet, Pogue holds on to 4th still. Out front, David Johansson looking to try and get past Jan Mild as we ride on board the rear end of Mild here and through into the long right-hander and up towards turn number 11. That is going to be a much better exit there from David Johansson, who is going to move to the inside now. David Johansson on the inside of Jan Mild. Thomas Batchelor looking to try and get involved just behind as well. Johansson takes the lead just before the 4th lap of asking. Here comes Thomas Batchelor, Riley Pogue as well, trying to get involved in that one. Johansson will have the inside, Mild stuck on the outside. That'll invite Batchelor to the inside line. It doesn't quite work out as Matt Neal visits the grass. Purple there from Riley Pogue, and he'll be wanting to try and dispatch the 2 cars in front of him to get onto the rear end of David Johansson as we continue to head around here about halfway through this race. At the end of this lap, it'll be 4 of 8 completed as we go onto the braking zone once more. They settle themselves in this fight at the front of the field. Jan Mild trying to hold on to second place, but now under attack from Thomas Batchelor. Batchelor gets to the inside here as we head up towards the chicane. Will duck out of it early though. Doesn't want to make that move up the inside. Unlike Hayden Ahmed, who's side by side with Titma behind. Will they get through? Staying on the circuit, they will. They lose a lot of time to the cars ahead. A little bit of a nudge there as that is Titma now going for the switchback on Hayden Ahmed, side by side between Paisley Knight and Titchler behind. Titchler to the inside of Paisley Knight. Will hold that inside line as they head around. And that's off the circuit there from Paul Titma. Somehow gets back on with without anyone getting involved in an accident. Time lost though for James Paisley Knight as this is now looking to the inside. Riley Pogue moves into second. Contact with Jan Mild. It's 3 wide. Mild, Batchelor and Neal behind. But that was contact for Pogue. Trying to make the move past Mild there. As Batchelor gets to the inside of Jan Mild. And Mild was holding on so well. Down to 5th with that. Let's see if we can catch what just happened in that fight. Heavy onto the brakes here. And it was just a tiny nudge. It genuinely was just a tiny nudge. I think that was a pretty fair move from a very, very far way back for Riley Pogue. But from the looks of it, definitely seemed to be that's a hard one to call. That is a hard one to call. Hard racing is what I'm going to say in that at the moment. But it's unfortunate for Jan Mild, who has fallen down to 5th. Pogue is going to need to put in the laps of his life here in the final 3 laps of asking. 2 seconds up to David Johansson. Pogue has taken second in both of the 2 races so far. If he takes second again, it has already been his best weekend. But he will be ruining the fact that he wasn't able to take the victory in race number 2. Could have been the opportunity here, but issues for Riley Pogue. He's off the circuit. Could have taken 3 second places. Still has the opportunity, but it's going to be a lot harder for him now. Off the circuit through turn number 10. James Paisley Knight and Demis Titchler side by side once again here. It is going to be the inside line for James Paisley Knight. Titchler looking to try and get the switch back on the exit. Paisley Knight holds off that inside line as they head up towards turn number 1 here, the 6th lap of asking. And it is going to be that outside line from Titchler. A slight wobble there, but it is going to be again another up and under attempt here from Titchler. He gets the speed on it this time. They're going to run side by side. Paisley Knight had an incident in this corner back in the first week of the season. He keeps it clean this time though and holds on to 8th position ahead of Demis Titchler. Titchler moves across to the left-hand side now to try and take back the move into the hairpin. Can't do it. Paisley Knight goes defensive. Titchler looks to the inside. No opportunity there. Gets back onto the racing line. Paisley Knight placing it in the middle of the corner to hold ahead of Demis Titchler as it stands. David Johansson leading away at the moment as we go up towards the penultimate lap of asking here. He's moved up from 6th position on the grid to take the lead in this race. Matt Neal has moved up from 4th on the grid to go into 2nd, and Batchelor has moved nowhere. He holds on to the 3rd place that he started in this reverse grid race. But it is still a position better than his race 2 results. Fights continue behind. Hayden Ahmed has made a couple of moves up as well. That was a big slide from Hayden Ahmed as he came into frame. He's chasing down his championship rival, Jan Mild here. And as we get into the last 2 minutes of this race, you can see that Mild is holding on by 2 points out of Ahmed. If they swap around, he'll be 1 point clear in the championship standings with the drop week. David Johansson has not maximised the points with the fastest laps not going his way. However, he has done almost everything that he possibly can at the top of this race right now, as that's an issue for Thomas Batchelor off the circuit. Down to 4th, could potentially lose out to Jan Mild. No, Mild is a further 1.2 seconds back there. Let's see what happened in that one. For Batchelor, was it contact with Riley Pogue? Pogue was going for the move to the inside. No, Pogue was there on the inside, and Batchelor has just pushed it off the circuit on that wider line in the wet. It is hard, but Riley Pogue up onto 3rd now. Only has Matt Neal to get past to get back into 2nd position. It is going to be white flag next lap. The last time Riley Pogue was this close to the driver in front of him was the last lap of race number 2, and he wasn't able to take it on David Johansson. He is the fastest man out there in this race. Can he take it on Matt Neal, who wobbles ahead of him? That's just going to be telling Pogue he can do this, as another slide there from Matt Neal to the outside. Goes Riley Pogue up towards the final turn as we get towards the white flag lap. The inside line from Neal. Pogue trying to do the switch back, but Neal places it perfectly that the switchback isn't possible. You can see the water being kicked up in the distance there. 3 seconds ahead is David Johansson, Titchler and Paul Titmer. They run side by side behind, as well as we also see Hayden Ahmed get past Jan Mild. Just up ahead is side by side in both of these fights. Jan Mild trying to hold on to Hayden Ahmed, does so, and Titchler holds on ahead of Titmer as well. Pogue still on the rear end of Matt Neal now as the final lap is here. They are going to be trying hard to both get 2nd position. Neal is going to go defensive, holds to the inside, that better line here, but trying to get that tighter line has slowed him down slightly on the exit. Enough for Pogue to put a wheel in, but the outside line, especially from this far back, is never going to work out. That doesn't mean Pogue is going to not put a wheel in. Pogue touches with a little bit of contact to get the wheel in here. They're still side by side in the battle for 2nd. Riley Pogue takes Matt Neal. Can he get that position? Just held up ahead. There's more contact over the crest as they get through towards turn 10. Neal's going to have the inside line. They're fighting away for 2nd. Pogue has to drop behind. Neal is going to have to be the most defensive he possibly can as Batchelor visits the glass once more. Pogue to the outside, Neal to the inside. It's not going to be the switchback move from Pogue. He knows that Neal's going to hold it. It's side by side. I'm actually on my chair as Riley Pogue takes 2nd position over Matt Neal. What an end to that race. What an absolute end to that race. My word, that was brilliant. Brilliant stuff there for Riley Pogue to take 2nd just at the end. We had to watch that just once more. If we can get back all the way actually to where that side-by-side began. Absolutely amazing racing there. A little bit of contact knocking Neal off the circuit for just a moment there, but it's side-by-side action as they head all the way to the end. It is going to be the inside for Pogue. Another bit of a nudge there. But Neal's got the inside line here. Pogue knows it's going to go Neal's way. He backs out just a little bit earlier. There's this huge slide from Batchelor behind. Batchelor did hold on to 4th even with that though. Pogue knew that Neal was going to defend the inside. He did it last lap, so he tried to hold the outside line and he carried that speed with him on that outside line. It turned across to the inside for turn number 12, and what an end to race number 3. What an end to round number 15, and what an end to the first half of the season here. Absolutely fantastic. 3 race victories in a row, though, for the man who came home first in race 1, in race 2, and in race 3. It's the first time this season that feat has been occurred, and it is the first time this season that in my sheet I have written the same name all the way across. And David Johansson ties Dan Mould's record of 5 race wins so far this season. With that then, let's just have a look at the results to the end of that last race, because I didn't go through the whole field like I did the last 2. David Johansson took the win once again in that one ahead of Riley Pogue. It shows there that that's the wrong race. That's why. Let's show the correct race. Here you go, race number 3. Matt Neal took home 3rd ahead of Thomas Batchelor. Jan Mild came home in 5th position ahead of Hayden Ahmed, so Mild doing well to outscore championship rival Hayden Ahmed this weekend. Paul Titmer took home 7th in that last race. James Paisley Knight came home in 8th ahead of Demis Titcherer, and Gregory Speakman came home in 10th. Dan Mould once again did not start that last race of the day after having to back out earlier on. But with that being said then, let's have a look at how the championship standings stand at the end of the first half of the season. 15 rounds complete. Drop weeks being applied. Of the 5 weeks, it means that 3 of those weeks count. David Johansson leads the championship, 20 points clear of Matt Neal. Thomas Batchelor now only 7 points behind Dan Mould. Thomas Brown falling down the championship order again with him not being here this week. But Riley Pogue, a great result for him, has moved him into 5th and just off of Batchelor and Mould himself. Jan Mild is not too far behind with 87 points. 2 points clear of rival Hayden Ahmed. Ronald de Jong is down into 8th position after not being here either. And James Paisley Knight finds his way into the top 10 with 72 points to his name. 11th position is for Demis Titcherer with 68 points, tied with Paul Titmer, and Gregory Speakman there in 13th place, as the rest of the drivers all not here this weekend. But what a fantastic evening of racing, as always, here at the Lane Sheets Racing British Touring Car Series, and I hope you have enjoyed it just as much as we have here in the commentary booth. That was an absolutely amazing race, evening of races, and what a way to end that last one. I genuinely got up onto my chair. I was so excited with how the end of that one came. If you've enjoyed this race and this evening of broadcast, make sure you hit that follow button here on the Beehive Bill Twitch channel. Also, make sure you head across to our YouTube channel to hit that subscribe button. We post all of the full race replays over there for you to watch. We also post extended highlights as well, so you can catch up on the go of all the events that you have missed. And if you have missed all of the races so far this season, there have been 15 of them in the 5 weeks of asking. Then make sure you go and check all of them out so you are caught up with how the standings look. If you want to keep up to date with all of the latest data and information about this league as well, head across to our website, beehivebillbroadcasting.com, and you can check out all of the LSR information over there and keep up to date with all of the stats, race results, and race calendar for this season of competition. I hope you have enjoyed it, because I certainly have. It's been an amazing evening of racing, and I am looking forward to next week's event not next week's event, 2 weeks' time at Brands Hatch. And that is a reminder to you all out there that the British Touring Car Series will not be on next Sunday. We are taking a week off, but we will return at Brands Hatch in 2 weeks' time for the 6th week of asking, rounds 16, 17 and 18 on December 14th. So make sure you join us then. We've got lots more coming your way here on the Beehive Build Broadcasting channel, though, because we do have the Next Gen Mazdas on Tuesday. We've got the SRL TCRs on Friday, and we are returning for the Matt Malone Patron League on Saturday for the final 2 rounds of competition. I hope you catch us for all of those ones, and I hope you have an amazing week ahead of you. Thank you so much for watching here on Beehive Build Broadcasting and here from the Lane Sheep Racing British Touring Car Series. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.